Robbie Forgotten. Chapter 15. The town hall bustled with activity as everyone worked to prepare the large space for their party. It had taken them the better part of the afternoon to put it together. Pixel and the mayor hung up the decorations, Miss Busybody provided the desserts with Ziggy serving as the taste tester, and Stephanie and Trixie handled the games. As for Stingy, he supervised them all from the comfort of the mayor's high-back office chair and kept track of the to-do list. "This is going to be so much fun!" Ziggy was already bouncing around from all the sweets he'd been sampling. "I can't wait to start the games," Stephanie said. Stingy checked off item after item from his list, nodding along with everyone's excited chatter. "Yes, my party is coming along just perfectly," he said. "It's not your party, Stingy," Trixie corrected him. "It's all of ours." "Well, it's my list." Stingy ruffled his sheaf of paper, and Trixie shook her head. Ownership aside, the party was looking to be their best one yet. They just needed one more thing. The big front door swung open before anyone realized it. All heads turned towards the entrance. Robbie stood in the doorway, staring back at them. For a moment they all remained frozen like so many deer in the headlights. Smiles and laughs broke out across the townspeople then, and they sang out in a loud chorus, "Surprise!" The kids cheered, and the mayor clapped his hands while Miss Busybody brought forth a multi-tiered cake bigger than her own head. It was generously layered in pink and white frosting and embellished with all sorts of candies from gumdrops to lollipops. Robbie didn't move from the open doorway, his stony expression unfazed by the outpouring of goodwill. "What is this noisiness?" Robbie spoke in a hard, flat tone. "It's a surprise party," Mayor Meanswell declared, waving his hands. "Well, maybe not so much a surprise," he reconsidered as he met Robbie's impassive stare. "You're early," Stingy complained, crumpling up his to-do list. "But it's still a party," Ziggy said. "Yeah, and it's all for you," Stephanie said. "What about me?" Stingy grumbled, but Trixie and Pixel shushed him. "A party for me," Robbie said. "Is that what you think?" His frown didn't waver as he made a cursory glance at the streamers strung along the windows, the balloons bobbing against the ceiling, and the expectant faces of all the townspeople. "I think not." "Ah, don't be like that," Trixie said. "Don't you want to play some party games?" "Yeah, and sing some party songs?" Pixel asked. "And get some party favors," Ziggy said. "Yes, come now, Reuben," Miss Busybody said with an indulgent giggle. "You simply must have some of this beautiful cake that I made." Something twitched across Robbie's face, a vein throbbing in his temple. "My name," Robbie grated, his voice rising to a shout, "is Robbie Rotten!" Bessie's tittering stopped, her eyes wide at the outburst. Behind them the children fell silent as well. The sudden cessation of festive exclamations plunged the room into an atmosphere heavy and prickly like an impending lightning strike. Nobody could move or speak in that moment, riveted by the dark and stormy expression on Robbie's face, his eyes burning into Bessie's. The skinny man took hold of the cake dish and yanked it out of the woman's hands. "I don't want your icky cake," Robbie growled, "and I don't want your miserable party." He aimed his fiery glare at each of the kids in turn, raising the large platter over his head. "This is your idea of fun, is it? You think you can get away with this? Well," he barked, "you're wrong!" They realized the weight of his words just as he hurled the cake to the floor. Miss Busybody screamed as her plate shattered and the cake exploded on her in a colorful cloud. The mayor and the children gasped and cried out in accompaniment to the woman's lead vocals, shielding themselves from the sugary shrapnel. "Fun's over!" Robbie shouted over the shock and dismay. He dashed out of the building, slamming the door behind him in a thunderous clap. Oh my! Mayor Meanswell sputtered through a glob of frosting that had splattered across his face. "Maybe some people don't like surprises," My hair! My dress! My cake!" Bessie howled and sobbed. Her hands flew all around, up to her bedraggled beehive hairdo, and down to her ruined dress, flapping at the broken pieces of china and chunks of cake strewn across the floor. "What in the world is going on?" "He's back," Stingy mumbled. "System restore," Pixel agreed with a somber nod. The kids all exchanged the same sorry looks between themselves. "We have to go after him," Stephanie said. "Uncle, will you and Bessie be okay here?" "Good idea, Stephanie," Milford said. He half stumbled, half slid across the frosted floor to grab the broom and dustpan. "I'll clean up here. You kids go on." The kids piled out of the town hall and burst onto the street, looking every which way for Robbie. The surly man had gotten quicker from all the exercise he'd gotten the past few weeks, and was already well down the block. Pushing and pulling each other, the children followed in the wake of his warpath. "Robbie, wait!" Stephanie shouted. Robbie did so, coming to a stop in the town square where Stephanie's pink stereo sat on the stone wall. The man turned back to face the kids, and they stumbled to a halt under the full force of his terrible look. "You made me dance," Robbie hissed. He seized the stereo and gripped it with white-knuckled fists. Stephanie's face paled, and she raised her hands, but in that same instant Robbie was already dashing the boombox to the ground. The plastic molding cracked and splintered, and one of the speakers popped out of its casing in a clatter. Kicking away the dislodged tape deck, Robbie marched out of the square. Stephanie let out a broken cry and rushed forward, not to chase Robbie, but to pick up the pieces of her property. "I can't believe it!" Trixie shook her fist after Robbie. "Of all the mean and nasty things to do!" "We need help," Pixel said, "and fast." "I know! Let's get Sportacus!" Ziggy hopped around the kids. "Come on, Stephanie, we'll send him another letter." Stephanie gave up piecing the stereo back together and stood up shakily. She rubbed at her eyes and set her chin. "Okay," the pink girl said. "Let's go." "We'll keep an eye on Robbie," Trixie promised, and ran after the angry man one way, while Stephanie went the other. "Where's he going?" Stingy asked between pants for breath as the kids followed Robbie. The man wasn't running away from them per se, but his long legs carried him at an astonishing clip as he strode forth with determination, a highly focused and furious look on his face. The tension in the tall man's frame, his tightly balled fists swinging side to side like wrecking balls, and the sharp stomp of his shoes, all were warning enough for the kids not to get too close. "Hey, Robbie, can't we talk about this?" Pixel tried calling to the man. But Robbie was muttering so many dark things that the boy's request didn't even reach him, falling on deaf ears. They came upon Miss Busybody's house, where Robbie suddenly stopped, rooted to the sidewalk. It gave the kids a chance to catch up with him, but they stopped too, giving him a sizable berth as he glowered at the big red house. "I did your chores!" Robbie seethed. He kicked and punched at Miss Busybody's fence, knocking out one board after the other like loose teeth until there was a sizable gap which he could pass through into her yard. Approaching the clothesline, the vengeful villain ripped down all the clean sheets hanging there and threw them to the ground, making the children gasp. "Not Miss Busybody's sheets!" Pixel scrambled to recover the soiled laundry before it could be trampled any further. Robbie tore through the flower bed and crashed through the hedge as he blazed a trail out of the yard without so much as a parting look at the destruction he had wrought. "So much for talking," Trixie groaned. Stephanie and Ziggy came running back and quickly joined their friends in trying to put Miss Busybody's yard back together, but they could only do so much. "Where's Sportacus?" Pixel grunted as he tried to shove a plank of wood back onto the fence, but it was hopeless without the right tools. "I don't know," Stephanie said as she brushed as much dirt off of Bessie's sheets as she could. "We sent the letter, but he didn't come down." "Maybe he's already here," Stingy proposed, but didn't sound too hopeful as he looked around. "There's certainly enough trouble going on. His crystal must have warned him by now." "Guys," Ziggy squeaked, pointing after Robbie, "look!" Following the small boy's finger, the rest of the kids saw where Robbie was heading next. Abandoning the lost cause that was Ms. Busybody's yard, they stumbled over fence boards and wrinkled sheets and raced to catch up. "You made me eat sports candy!" Robbie snarled as he burst into the community garden. Snatching up a spading fork, Robbie stabbed and slashed wildly at one garden bed after the other. He pulverized the tomatoes into paste, shredded the cabbage beyond recognition, and destroyed the summer squash until there was nothing left but compost. "My garden!" Stingy yelped. "Oh no, all the sports candy!" Ziggy wailed. Robbie completed his tour of the garden by knocking over the wheelbarrow and sending the mountain of dirt it held into an avalanche. He tromped through the mess on his way out, tracking dirt with every stomp. Ziggy rushed over to his garden plot and sifted his hands through the torn-up vegetables. Nothing had been spared. Even the lollipops he'd been trying to grow were shattered from the spading fork's assault. "How could he?" Ziggy whimpered. "All of our vegetables ruined!" Each garden bed was worse than the last, but there was no time for the kids to tend to them now. Not with Robbie still cutting a harsh course through LazyTown. He hadn't gone far this time. It was only a short distance to his next destination, and the kids could see him from where they were. "You made me play!" Robbie roared as he bounded onto the sports field. "Oh, great!" Trixie gave up on the destroyed garden plots and barreled after him. "Sportacus, where are you?" Ziggy whined, while Stephanie gently pulled him away from the ruins of the garden to join the others. Robbie still had the spading fork clenched in one fist. With his free hand he snatched up the soccer ball resting by the goal. The kids stumbled to a halt on the sidelines as Robbie stared daggers between them and the ball. He swung the fork up high and brought it down in a vicious arc. The sharp gardening tool punctured the ball as easily as though it was a balloon. "Not my ball!" Trixie shrieked, but she was drowned out by the explosion of escaping air. The man chucked the flattened piece of polyester towards Trixie as she ran over. While Trixie caught the ruined ball with a stunned look on her face, Robbie made quick work of the other pieces of equipment lying around, jamming the fork into basketballs and volleyballs and ripping the goalie net asunder. Nobody dared to get near him until he ran out of things to tear apart. Only then did he pitch the gardening tool into the trash can and storm off of the field. He stopped one more time, fuming in front of the tree house. "I had to live in a tree!" Robbie shouted loud enough to be heard from the top of the canopy down to the tips of the roots. The kids arrived in time to see him grab hold of the ladder. After so many weeks of eating vegetables and exercising with endless games and chores, Robbie had strength enough to wrench the unwieldy instrument away from the trunk and hurl it down. The ladder hit the ground with a bang, bouncing once before resting in pieces from the impact. "My ladder!" Stingy's voice cracked. "Was it really yours, Stingy?" Trixie snapped. "It might have been," Stingy sniffed. "Or my father's." "Why are you doing this, Robbie?" Stephanie demanded. "We're supposed to be friends." Robbie didn't respond at first, his whole body rising and falling as he panted and growled. He had run and shouted and broken many things in such a short time, and now that there was nothing left, he took the moment to catch his breath. He turned sharply round to face the kids. They took a collective step back at his frightful visage, eyes blazing in his darkened face. "Friends!" Robbie spat. "With friends like you! Who needs friends? You!" He jabbed his finger at them all as his voice rose higher like crashing thunder. "Are not my friends! You're nothing but a pack of connivers! You knew I lost my memory, and what did you nasty little brats decide to do? You took advantage of me! You laughed at me!" "That's not true," Stephanie said. "We were only trying to help—" "Do not lie to me again," Robbie snapped. "I don't want your help. I don't need your help." He threw his arms wide open, offering the whole of LazyTown for consideration. "You tried to play a trick on me, to use me, and this is what you get. Now you can all just help yourselves." Robbie stared hard at the children. daring them to argue with him, but they didn't. They couldn't say anything more to him, and they didn't follow him any more when he stalked away. The kids stood under the treehouse with the broken ladder scattered at their feet, their sports field in tatters, the garden uprooted. They looked at each other, the same shocked expressions mirrored on every face. Nobody said a word for a long moment, not until Ziggy asked the question they were all thinking. What happened to Sportacus? Sportacus was in the same spot where Robbie had left him when he returned to his lair. The man's breathing came slow and light, barely moving his chest where the crystal shone red. His eyes were closed and flickered faintly beneath the lids, stirring as though in a nightmare. Sweat peppered his forehead and his skin looked clammy and cold. He was so still, so quiet. A sprinkling of water in his face got the elf's mustache to twitch as it crept between his dry lips, and his chest swelled with a slight intake of breath. Another sprinkling, and he shifted his head away in response. Robbie gripped Sportacus under the chin and turned his head back so that he could jam the carrot into his mouth and make him chew it. The red glare in the crystal dimmed and faded away, replaced with a soft white glow. Sportacus's eyes fluttered open. He sat up with difficulty, but under his own power. The hero looked groggily down at the carrot tucked in his hand, then up at Robbie. The villain had already left him again, moving across the chamber towards the control center. "Robbie," Sportacus tried to say, but Robbie interrupted him without turning back around, saying only 2 words. "Get out."